The presenting sponsor of Andrew Talks to Chefs is Mies. Mies is the chef-created recipe operating system that makes your professional kitchen life easier with unprecedented tools for recording, scaling, analyzing, costing, and teaching recipes, much of it at the press of a virtual button. Learn more at getmeez.com/Andrew. That's GETMEEZ.com/Andrew. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs is supported in part by San Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, San Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurtured the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com.
I'm Massimo Bottura.
This is Amanda Cohen.
This is David Kinch.
This is Mike Anthony.
This is Sohui Kim.
This is Amanda Freitag.
This is Richard Blaze.
This is Paul Kahn.
This is Curtis Stone.
This is Stephen Harris.
This is Missy Robbins.
And you're listening to Andrew Talks to Chefs. What is Gage Tollner? Who was Gage Tollner? Why has this restaurant survived for so long? What they landmarked in 1975 after this two amazing landmarks in New York? Like, how does this come to be? And then, wait a minute, Edna Lewis cooked here in the late 80s and was here for 4 years? What? The history is massive, and the history pulled me in, and just going over stacks of old menus was just so fascinating.
That is the voice of Sohui Kim, chef and co-owner of Insa and Gage Tollner in Brooklyn, New York. Sohui is our guest today on Andrew Talks to Chefs. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Andrew Talks to Chefs. I am your host, Andrew Friedman. Our guest today is Sohui Kim of Gage Tollner Restaurant and Insa in Brooklyn, New York. I'll tell you a little more about Sohui in just a moment. But I do first need to mention, as longtime listeners know, this is our very first video podcast. We're obviously not the first podcast to go to video. Everyone seems to be doing it. But we are trying to take as much advantage of the medium as we can, and you will see what I mean by that as we move along. I'll also let you know that we are now on YouTube. You can also, of course, watch videos on Spotify. Those would be the two main places that you can do that. And if you listen regularly, you can continue to do that as you like. The only other thing I need to mention about the video piece is that we are now on TikTok, and we have the same handle that we had over on Instagram, and that is @ChefPodcast. @ChefPodcast. Please give us a follow there. We will have some content from the show, but also content that you'll never see here on the show. I also want to mention that if you've heard our very first episodes from 8 long years ago, you know that I kind of just jumped in and we figured out things as we went. We tweaked the format, we tweaked the intros, we tweaked whether or not I did the intros alone. That's probably going to be the same process over the next few shows. If you have any thoughts for us, feel free to shoot us a message. You can email me via our website, andrewtalkstochefs.com, or you can DM me on any of our social platforms, and we're open, I should say, to any suggestions. And when I say we, although he's not on camera, we do now have a dedicated producer and my new business partner, and that is Rod Aline, who is an old friend of mine from when we both were in the film business. We'll get Rod on camera in the next couple of weeks and maybe do an interview and you all can meet him. And we also have our trusty extern, Victor Michael Thelian, who is behind the camera today and has been invaluable to us in getting the show up and running. Victor is a recent graduate of the Institute of Culinary Education here in New York. I should also say our home is Gage Tollner, which is a restaurant I love. It is a landmark restaurant in downtown Brooklyn. It's only about 3 blocks from my apartment, that way. And we are going to be shooting in the private dining room there unless we go on location for some reason. And I'm very grateful to Gage and Tollner for allowing us to use that space on an ongoing basis. I do also want to say, if you're discovering us here on YouTube for the first time, you can't watch the episodes because they're audio only, but there is a catalog of more than 300 shows from over the last 8 years. I think there are a lot of really great interviews in there with some major chefs. I would encourage you to peruse the list. You can go to andrewtalkstochefs.com to do that, or you can scroll through on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever platform you use for your podcast needs. A quick note of thanks to one of our promotional partners, San Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, San Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurtured the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com. Our first guest in this new format is Sohui Kim. And the reason we booked Sohui, well, I've been meaning to get Sohui on the show forever, because Sohui and her husband and business partner, Ben Schneider, had been a guest on a show I used to do years ago called The Front Burner with my friend, Chef Jimmy Bradley. Some of you may remember that. And she was a great guest. But she and Ben are the co-owners of Gage and Tollner. They also own Insa, which is a karaoke spot and Korean restaurant here in Brooklyn as well. And many of you may know them from a beloved restaurant that they had for many years in Red Hook, and that was the Good Fork, which is a place that a lot of people remember very fondly. And that was their place before the current restaurants. Sohui has an interesting background. I won't spoil too much of it here. We get into it pretty much right away. But she has worked for some prominent chefs before striking out on her own with Ben. She's got a really great story, and she tells it very well. So I don't think I'm going to say anything else about it, except for this message from Mies. Hey everybody, Andrew here. I want to encourage you to check out our presenting sponsor, Mies. Not because they're our sponsor, but because Mies exists to make your kitchen life easier. Mies is the chef-created recipe operating system for culinary professionals. What that means is that Mies is a virtual place to house all of your recipes, and just as importantly, it enables you to derive all kinds of information from them: food costs, allergen data, yield loss, unit conversions, and nutritional breakdowns. And also to scale them up or down, and even to cost them, and to do most of that at the press of a virtual button. Mies is also a teaching tool that empowers you to incorporate how-to photos and videos to illustrate individual recipe steps and techniques, which is especially useful and time-saving for multi-unit organizations. The basic version of Mies is free for the entire culinary industry. Upgrade to premium and let Mies make your entire business more efficient and centralized. Train and onboard team members, manage production, and even process invoices. Seriously, if you work with recipes in the pro kitchen or bar, Mies was built for you and will make your entire restaurant's or company's kitchen life easier. And as a listener of Andrew Talks to Chefs, receive 25 free recipe uploads and breakdowns on your new Mies account by signing up today. Learn more at getmeez, that's GETMEEZ.com/Andrew. Simply click through via the link on the episode description for today's show. Okay, and with that, here is my conversation with Sohui Kim. Here you go. Sohui, good to see you.
Andrew, pleasure.
Thank you for hosting us. This
Of
is our
course.
first video episode ever. This is our new home for our video episodes. You and your husband and partner, Ben,
Mhm.
have been kind enough to be our home away from home. So thanks for letting us be here.
Absolutely. We're so honored. And we love to show off this room. So
Yeah, I
you're
can
more
see
than welcome.
why.
Yeah.
So before we get to your whole story, since we are here and since you do own the joint, can you just talk for a minute about how this literally landmark
Oh, yeah.
restaurant came into your guys' lives and how you decided to do it and how you decided to do it with Sunken, who's the third partner here?
Yeah, it's a very good question. The genesis, the story, it goes way back to 2016, 17. 17 is the year that Sunken asked Ben and myself to partner up with him. He had this great idea. It was a pop-up that he did at his old restaurant called Fort Defiance.
Which was in Red Hook, as it was your first
That's
restaurant.
right. So we're sister-brother restaurant, right, a block apart. The Good Fork opened 2006, and a couple of years after that, Sunken opened up his joint. So it was called Sunken Harbor Club, and he ran it once a week. And he was going through a divorce at the time, and he was spending a lot of time in downtown Brooklyn. And he noticed that there just wasn't a lot of a really nice drinking and eating establishment. As you know, the history of Fulton Mall is, it's long and it's gone through a lot of transition. So he said, wouldn't it be a great idea to bring Sunken Harbor Club to downtown Brooklyn? And would you, Sohui, consult on a little bar menu, and would Ben help him design it, since Ben has designed both the Good Fork and Insa? So we thought it was a really fun concept. So the two boys wanted to, take a look, like a little tucked away, hidden away, maybe on a second floor next to a dentist's office or something, like a little speakeasy. Anyway, long story short, the real estate agent showed them a whole bunch of spots that were not very nice. And then finally, out of desperation, brought Ben and Sunken to this restaurant.
Which was dark at the time?
Which was dark, which was vacant. It had not been anything for about, I think, a year or two, maybe a little longer than that. The last thing that downstairs, a space that is Gage Tollner occupied, was a t-shirt shop, wigs, knickknacks, and if you could imagine, they had to cover up all the beautiful landmarked, specific
That was one of my
items.
questions, was when the landmark came into effect, because any business that wasn't a restaurant.
That's right. You had to. Well, even a restaurant, you had to.
No, but I mean, if you didn't want that look, you would have to,
that's
like you
right.
just said,
cover
it
up. But you could definitely not remove it because it's
or alter
it. Alter it, yeah. So the commissioner is pretty strict on that. So it'd been vacant, and we learned the history that Gage Tollner stopped being Gage Tollner here in this space in 2004. So ever since then, TGI Friday, Arby's, and then various knick-knack shops. So the real estate agent showed them the main floor, and the guys were floored by it. And then she said, well, for your needs for Sunken Harbor Club, there's a second floor that's also available. So that's what started this whole thing.
Wow, so this thing that people think of now as sort of an adjunct to Gage and Tollner, because right behind this wall is Sunken Harbor Club, but that was actually the genesis of the whole thing.
That was the genesis of the whole
so
thing.
Interesting.
We're looking just to do, because back then in 2015, Ben and I had just opened Korean karaoke barbecue in Gowanus. So I was like, I'm a little tired. So I just only had the bandwidth to do a simple, fun menu for Sunken Harbor Club. So yeah, that's what started this whole nonsense, I like to say. But
that is so interesting. And I don't know if this is still the case, but I know at one point it was, excuse me, that spaces in New York City that were landmarked, inside and exterior, there were only 3 at the time that Gage and Tollner became landmarked. And the other 2 were it was like the New York Public Library. It was 2.
So we are the third. So Gage and Tollner is the third interior-exterior landmark in 1975. That's when it was landmarked.
Right.
And prior to that was Grant's Tomb and the New York Public Library.
Yeah.
And then Gage and Tollner.
That's crazy company.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It's amazing. Well, I'm glad it survived. It's gorgeous.
It's the only way that it survived, and I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to some other stuff about Gage and Tollner. I want to get into your whole story. It's a very interesting one. You were born in Seoul,
Yeah.
Korea, and you left when you were 10? Okay, so that's very young, but it's not
Yeah.
too young to have memories.
A lot of memories.
Yeah. Can
A
you
lot
just,
of,
what pops for you still?
Yeah, it's funny. Now that I'm in my 50s, I think back a lot about my childhood in Korea, and I did a lot of soul searching around the time that I opened Insa, which is Korean American chef. I opened the Good Fork in 2006, and they immediately thought that it was Korean, and I sort of was still like, no, that's not me. I want to be, I want to make. Korean cuisine is not what I want to make myself known for, and that was sort of the thinking. But then around the time of Insa, I really, really wanted to fully embrace the culture. So I even went back in 2017. Um, the memories to me is like a otherworldly, really, and I have a lot of memories of my grandmother, who was a devout Buddhist, and she would take us when we were little on retreats to her temple. A lot of Buddhist um, way of life, nature, temple cuisine, foraging for food and mushrooms, lots of hikes. A real naturalist way to live. So I have beautiful memories of the countryside and the mountains of South Korea. Living in Seoul, of course, I remember taking the bus as a child. I mean, I could still go through in my mind from my house that my father had built in this area called Sangdo-dong, and walking down the alleyways and all the way up to my grammar school. So all those memories are very vivid. A lot of street food that's become kind of popularized by shows like the Squid Game and other cultural phenomenon that's happening. So yeah, I definitely a big treasure trove of food memories, really.
Now, I read an interview with you, and I hope it's okay if I bring it up.
Sure.
But you expressed later in life some regret
Mm.
that you were not fully open
Mm-hmm.
to the richness of the experiences that you, I assume some
Yeah.
of which you just described. I think
Yeah.
you called yourself a sardonic 7-year-old.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that aspect of it. And especially, it sounds like your grandmother was somebody who really looms large in your memories.
Definitely. She raised me up. She was, when I think about, like, my mother passed away a couple of years ago. She had her amazing life, but at home my grandmother really was the focal point, and I learned a lot. And so she is a mother figure, and we were very, very close. So yeah, I think it's just sort of natural. In many ways, a typical journey. A young child immigrates to this country. We stopped speaking Korean because our dad felt like we needed to really catch up. And so there was no speaking Korean in the household. And then the brain absorbs so much, and we're so adaptable. My brother and I, we were 10 and 7, and we absorbed English language within like the first 6 months. And then finally, we weren't speaking Korean in the house. And he said, okay, no more speaking English in the house. So part of that whole assimilation process,
Right.
where you have to sort of make yourself fit in, right, quote unquote, and
Figure out the hyphenate.
figure out, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
and figure out for us what the American way of life, eating, being really meant. And to me, I think for young people, it means a certain amount of like shutting that off. Like, okay, I don't want kimchi on everything. I want pizza and I want hamburger. Like what it is to be American. At
Yeah.
that point in life for a 10-year-old to sort of really to feel it out. And I think I was a terrible eater. Like I did not like spicy food. So hello, the national food of Korea is kimchi, and my grandmother would wash it off in water. And I actually talked to a lot of other Korean immigrants or kids who grew up here. Same thing, sort of shunning the things that you are most familiar with and wanting that new experience. So I was a very picky eater for a really long time. And then really, of course, fully embraced it, when I became an adult, and then I realized how much I'd lost. So I studied Korean language again at university, in college. Um, so there was a lot of sort of reclaiming, and I think that happens, and especially when I had our 2 children, it was very much like, yeah, what is the Koreanness? Well, like how much of my culture is it's just in the blood. And the days that I'm sad and feeling blue, it's a bowl of bubbling, hot jjigae is what I want. So It is. It's been a really interesting sort of look back. And when I wrote the book Korean Home Cooking, when I opened Insa, a Korean barbecue restaurant with Ben, that was a real moment for me where it just all sort of came together for me. Because, when I was younger, studying, learning how to be a chef, it was very much the European style techniques and like, all the fancy stuff. And to me, Korean food didn't fit into that. But fast forward 20 years now, the hottest restaurants are, all Korean inspired and fine dining, tweezer food, like, these chefs, these young chefs are killing it with that. But that's how long it took, I think, for Korean food to really sort of come to main stage, right? The fact that everybody, even home cooks, have kimchi in their refrigerator, know what gochujang is, and it's now turned into the global pantry that people rely on, whether you're a professional chef or a home cook.
Yep.
So Korean food has come a long way.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I was going to save this question for later, but when you mentioned when you guys did the Good Fork in the early mid aughts,
Yeah.
and you said people assumed it was going to be Korean food. I was going to ask when we got to that in the timeline, if you thought that was even if that would have succeeded, because that was about 10, 12 years ahead of the wave you just talked about.
Oh, totally. So it was 20 years. So we turned over the Good Fork to our friends to become a pub a year and a half ago. And so this coming March, it would be celebrating 20 years there, because we opened in 2006. And the opening menu was really, I put a lot of thought into it because I knew that Korean food was not going to make it in that little tiny gorgeous neighborhood of Red Hook. So I knew that it needed to be more welcoming and unbeknownst to me, so there's been several cookbooks written about the new, what do they call it, New Brooklyn cuisine or something, right around the 2000s, when the Franny's, Good Fork, Aldi La, Applewood, remember all those restaurants? Those really great
it's
restaurants?
It's just kind of new American cuisine without the ring molds.
Exactly.
Right?
But it really traveled from Manhattan to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And it all happened in the early 2000s.
Yep.
And certainly the Good Fork rode that wave. And so when I unveiled, the Good Fork menu and had, wild boar ragu with homemade pappardelle and homemade dumplings that I made as sort of a hybrid, gyoza pot sticker type thing. And then I wanted to use French techniques, that I learned in all these fancy formal fine dining rooms in Manhattan, dos confit, and also utilizing everything that is farm to table. Remember that phrase, farm to table?
It's one of my least favorites.
I know.
That's
it doesn't
another
apply now. It's totally another conversation, another episode. But really wanted to use, farm greens and establish relationships with amazing farmers and growers and artisanal food makers and showcase that on the menu. So they tell me that it was a little above, but I think it really was a movement at the time, to have young, very motivated and talented chefs who couldn't afford the rents in Manhattan anymore. And they were like, well, we live in Brooklyn anyway, so why not here? And so super proud of that menu, but it really was the term that unveiled what is still used today, the global menu, right? Global accented menu.
Yeah, which again, I would just say is New American.
It is New American, right? So back then we did call ourselves New American with global accents. And this word global, I think, kept popping up, after we opened the Good Fork. Not to be confused with fusion, because that was another one that I hated back in the day. Fusion, confusion food. But really a young chef learning the items in her pantry and knowing what to do with these ingredients and putting it together in a new, refreshing way that doesn't dilute a certain cultural, like cuisine. It's not melding. It's just utilizing these ingredients to make something fresh.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is all, we need a better name for it because it's been around for 40 years.
We do.
But to me, all of this stuff is New American. Like
totally, it is.
Like if you go back to when the Gotham Bar and Grill opened.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right, or not when it first. When Alfred took over. Alfred Portali took over a year after it opens. French trained.
Yeah.
But there's a daily changing pasta.
That's right. Exactly.
There's the incorporation of curry.
Totally.
All these things.
Yeah.
But the dishes, he wasn't calling it an Indian dish. It just became part of the pantry.
Right.
A lot of these things.
So still the New American concept it fits for sure because you talk about authenticity, you talk about what it is to be American, what it is to be American food, and we're going to talk about Edna Lewis and sort of the genesis of what American food really, where it really comes from, American, and it is a lot of that history, especially in the recent history of immigrants, and immigrants are under attack. Like, so what does that mean for all these other things that we grapple with in life? But when you're talking about food, it really is, American food is global food in many ways.
Well, this is another question I would have found a place for later, but since you just brought up the immigrant piece, you came here when you were 10. One of your restaurants is Korean. And the answer may be none of the above, right? But how do you identify? Do you think of yourself as Korean American? Do you think of yourself as a Korean who lives in America, who is, has just how do you, if at all, because in some respects you don't need to put yourself in a lane, right? Enough other people will do that for you. But is this a question you ever ponder?
It's not a question that I ponder now because, having been a chef for so long and having lived in this country more than I lived in Korea, of course I'm American, naturalized, citizenship, the whole thing. I have 2 kids who are, but who border that. So I think about it now when it comes to my children, right? Because, when they were young, they were like, well, what am I? I know I look different. And so there was a lot of talk about race, identity, and we still talk about it. They're teenagers now, 2 gorgeous teenagers who navigate, the tough landscape of identifying oneself in America and in the world. So in that respect, I think about it in a cultural sense. But for me, I think a lot of that soul searching was, like I said, it happened 15 years ago when I wrote the cookbook, the Korean cookbook and the Korean restaurant. But just coming up, I think if you're comfortable in your skin and you know where you come from and you are paying respect to, there's a term in Korea, filial piety. You recognize your ancestors. There's some rites, rituals that you do on Thanksgiving or on death anniversaries and on birthdays. When you are in touch with your heritage and your personal history, I think you feel really grounded. And I'm trying to impart that to my children. But when I have interviews, when I get up in the morning, no, I don't say, do I feel Korean today? Do I feel American today?
Yeah,
no, of course not. But it really does. If I am in a the political climate is pretty hot right now, and there's certain parts of the country I do feel sometimes uncomfortable, going to. So that's when I question. That's when I not question, but that's when I do think about my difference and the otherness that I felt, growing up in this country as an immigrant. But yeah, no, I know where I live politically, socially. And I tell you, being in this industry, which is pretty tough, has I think made me come to terms with all those difficult questions that one might go through, growing up. But no, I feel really good.
Good. I hope it wasn't a bad question.
It's not a bad question at all. It's a question that everybody thinks about, right? I mean, all of us, to a certain extent, we all have to grapple with, where we come from, where our families come from, what our histories tell us. And to make it all make sense in the current, political, social climate, that's it. You have to think about it for sure. I think it's a fabulous question. And in terms of my career as a Korean American chef, of course, it's like, can I put this on? Like, let's talk about Gage Tollner. I'm the founder, executive chef, partner at Gage Tollner. It is certainly not a Korean restaurant. But do I use the pantry that I know? Do I use the global pantry that I talked about that makes a chef so good? Do I use a little kimchi in this dish, and do I use a little gochujang in this dish, but don't advertise it as Korean? You know what I mean? Just like a lot of great chefs do. I think that's the trick, and that's the key, to be able to learn every day about different uses of ingredients. We learn every day, and to be able to utilize that to make it make sense on a menu that has a history dates back 150 years. And honestly, when Ben and Sinjin found this place and they were like, we found the perfect spot for Sunken Harbor Club, but we have to open Gage Tollner first. and I've said this 1,000 times. It's like sending two boys out for a glass of milk and they come back dragging a cow that's mooing. I'm like,
Right.
are you nuts? We're talking about a 20-seat speakeasy.
Right.
And you want to open up a 100-seat, like 150-year-old oyster chop house.
Right.
Are you crazy?
Yeah.
In downtown Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But that's how it all started. And for me, obviously, because my job was to come up with the opening menu and get the back of the house situated and just, to raise up a really great food program, is to look back at the history. Right. What is Gage Tollner? Who was Gage Tollner? Why has this restaurant survived for so long? They so much, like, landmarked in 1975 after there's two amazing landmarks in New York. Like, how does this come to be? And then wait a minute, Edna Lewis cooked here in the late 80s and was here for 4 years. What? The history is massive, and the history pulled me in, and just going over just stacks of old menus was just so fascinating. And then to be tasked with honoring all of that,
Sure.
and to come up with, the most anticipated restaurant opening of 2020 was pretty intense. And you know what happened on March 15th.
Yes, March 13th actually, but yes.
Yeah. Our opening was supposed to be March 15th.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
I'm sure you were watching the news with on the edge of your seat.
Gosh.
We'll come back to all that. So just to move ahead a little bit, I know you did not, to put it mildly, you did not initially start down a culinary path.
No.
We kind of share this a little bit, as much as we can. I was a Columbia College graduate. You went to Barnard College.
Did.
I was actually an RA at Barnard 1 year.
Oh, really?
Yes. I don't know if they
Very cool.
still let Columbia guys do that, but yes, I was. And then you didn't make the decision to start cooking until you were 29.
Yeah.
So can you this is a story we hear a lot here.
Yeah.
We hear it especially from a lot of people of various Asian backgrounds, right? It seems like per capita, the parental response to hearing their kid, forget about having paid for college, just the idea my kid's going to go into this dirty profession, this grungy profession, is often hard to take. So what did you think you were going to do, and what was the build up to moving into where you ended up?
Yeah, great question. Such a twist and turn. When I meet kids in their 20s or right out of college, I have a first year college student, and they all feel like, I don't know what to major in. I'm like, I didn't figure it out until late 20s. Like, take your time.
Right.
I was, elite college. I started out at Bowdoin for 2 years. I missed the city too much, so I transferred to Barnard. And it was very much so the ivory tower, like, you become a profession, professional, which means white collar, which means lawyer, doctor, engineer. Like, this is the thing, especially tying in the whole immigrant story, right?
Can I just interject one thing?
Yes.
It's so funny. Hooni Kim did this show.
I know.
Early on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was it's one of fan favorite.
Yeah.
But he listed the professions you just did.
Yeah.
And then he said, and if you're a screw up,
Yeah.
accountant. Like that
Right.
was like
Right.
that was like the bottom of
Right.
the Korean barrel.
Right. I would also add real estate, but okay. Yeah. So it's not unusual, and it's actually kind of cliche. And Hooni, I know him, he's so talented, and I really like him a lot. There's a lot of us that were plucked here and then sort of had that ethos, the family life of like, this is what you pursue, and we're not going to take anything less than that. And if you think that you're going to do stuff like be an artist or go to cooking school, like, forget it. That is not on the cards. I remember specifically when I was a student in middle school applying to high school, I really wanted to go to art and design high school or the Fame School, LaGuardia, because I love painting and music.
Well, we have to say, not everyone will know Fame at this point.
Oh, yeah.
Fame was a movie
Yeah.
set at what they called
1970s.
the High School for the Performing Arts.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So Fame was a late movie by Alan Parker in the 70s.
That's right.
And it was a huge hit.
Huge hit.
Yeah,
and actually, Fiordello LaGuardia High School is that school.
Right. No, I'm saying, but yeah, I don't
people know the Fame
People
school.
may not know
right.
Fame. Yeah.
And that's what we wanted, right? To be cool, to be musicians, dancers, artists. And that's where I really sort of, and maybe that sort of makes sense because being a chef, it is culinary arts of some kind. But anyway, when I was 16, my father passed away, and he really was driving the ship. Like, he was a lovely man. But he was an immigrant, and he really wanted the better life for his children, very much like Sohui Kim's family. By the way, we're not related. And it
I was assuming people may know that's not the most unusual of names, but thanks for pointing that out.
Yes. And just all of us growing up in that era, it really was like you climb the ivory tower, you get the education, you become a lawyer or doctor, and that's that. And then as a hobby, as my dad said, you could paint and play clarinet, at your leisure. So he passed away. But I still was carrying his vision, right? And I think that when you're a young child and you lose your parents, you could go either one way, like, oh, forget it, I'm just gonna do my thing. Or you become a little beholden to the memories, and there was a reason. I was like, well, my father is the reason why he brought us here, and I guess I have to sort of carry out, his dream. So I wrote that for a long time, and that's why I went to places like Barnard, graduated with a political science major, and was studying for my LSATs, and I got a respectable job at a publishing company whilst I studied for the LSATs. And I just kept dragging my feet.
Yeah.
And I just kept having dinner parties at my house. And I'm like, I don't want to go to law school. And I realized that I just couldn't, to honor his memory is not to do everything that he sort of, prescribed, for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I came to peace. I came to a good understanding. And
did your mom give you a pass? Or?
My mom, they were divorced, kind of complicated, so I didn't really live with her. And she's sort of this free spirit, and she was an amazing cook. And if there is a cooking gene, I definitely get it from my mother. And she's out in LA, and she's like, just do whatever you want. She was more of a free spirit. But so anyway, I did apply. And it was really one of those moments where, like, this is it. This is a defining moment in my life. Do I really want to take this path, or am I going to do something crazy? And doing that crazy thing was to take the money that I saved and put it all into culinary school. And that's what I did in my late 20s.
Amazing. This is a good place for a break.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs was filmed at the iconic Gage Tollner restaurant in beautiful downtown Brooklyn, situated for more than 125 years just across the Brooklyn Bridge from Manhattan and just steps from several major subway lines. Gage Tollner mingles a transporting landmark setting with contemporary standards of food and hospitality. Gage Tollner's current chapter began in 2021 when the restaurant was reopened by a trio of successful Brooklyn restaurateurs following a lovingly performed restoration. In addition to the expansive chandelier downstairs dining room, the second floor is home to the Sunken Harbor Club, Gage Tollner's very own tropical cocktail bar, and to two conjoined private spaces decorated to resemble a Victorian townhome. We film in one of those. Whether for any occasion dining, a drink or bite at the walk-in-only bar, or a private event, Gage Tollner looks forward to hosting you. For more information and or to reserve your table today, visit the link in our episode description for today's show at andrewtalkstochefs.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Oh, welcome back. Okay, so we were talking a second ago about you deciding to go to culinary school.
Mm-hmm.
That's always something I'm curious to know
Mm-hmm.
About the decision, because it's
Mhm.
not inexpensive.
No.
And as you know, there's a lot of people who just go knock on a back door of a kitchen and
Mm-hmm.
get a gig, and they
Mhm.
start learning on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide you wanted to go to cooking school? And in hindsight, do you think you needed to go to cooking school?
Okay, great question. I couldn't not go to culinary school because the back door wouldn't, I knocked and it wouldn't answer. Back in the day, why would anybody want to become a line cook in the city? Like zero pay. I think back then minimum wage was $6.50 and they didn't pay overtime and there was a lot of abuses of laws and we didn't know any better. So it really was the culture of like the old world, like French, apprenticeship. You know what I mean? You pay your dues, you work in a kitchen,
Sometimes for free.
sometimes for free. And it actually felt like I was working for free in a lot of places. Thank goodness the times have changed. There's been a lot of great movements since to expose good working environments. People, everyday people getting, benefits that they deserve. But back in the day, if you did not have an experience, at least a year or two, no one will look at you or even offer you a job as entry level, which was back then garde manger or even prep. And then someone told me that I should go to culinary school, that chefs look highly on those things because it does cost money and then it's dedicated time.
And they know you're coming in with at least some
basic
skill set.
knowledge,
Yeah.
which I don't know. I think a lot of people, once I got to the restaurants, I realized that I kind of didn't have to go, but it certainly it was fun to be in an air conditioned environment and have food brought up and meet the lovely people that I met. It is true. There was about 20 kids, 20 people, I shouldn't say, not kids. There's a lot of career changers in the classroom that I was, and I think only 2 of us are still cooking. And
Oh, wow.
so it's just like any, and sort of any certification. I think there's a lot of people sort of exploring, and it's like, hey, I want to be Emeril Lagasse on television, and that was a whole big thing, right? The big rise of food TV was happening 20 plus years ago, and people thought that it was glamorous. So it started changing. The industry started changing just a little bit, sort of letting go of like, only ex-convicts and like people who can't do anything else go to culinary school or work in kitchens. And I had specifically wanted to get this certificate or degree so that I could open up a catering business because I knew that line cooks didn't make any money and I was really warned about that. But once I got to culinary school and once I started doing my externships and working for free at restaurants so that I could really get the insider scoop on like, what is it like to be in a fine dining restaurant? Where do I start? Who do I go to? And I was very, very lucky to have found Michael Anthony, Dan Barber. They were co-chefs at the time at Blue Hill.
The one in Manhattan.
The one in Manhattan.
In the village.
And then I was their intern, and then I worked in the kitchen for a little while, and then Michael Anthony, whom I'm still very fond of and close to. He's such a nice guy. He offered me a job because they were working on the blueprints for Stone Bar up in Tarrytown. And I just couldn't see myself doing the reverse commute. So they connected me to Anita Lowe, which was just 2 blocks away in the West Village, a restaurant called Insa. And she really, I glommed onto her. She is a dear friend, a dear mentor. And she's been, I've always been able to like reach out to her for professional advice after I left her kitchen. And her being such a very strong, just a badass chef, who just happens to be a female and who also happens to be Asian American. So there was a lot of that. She gave me a lot of support and she gave me a lot of advice, which I'm so grateful for.
Can I ask you a question? I haven't asked this in a while. I think I've only asked it once before, but I find it such an interesting thing as a Caucasian. Sometime in the last 20 years or so, we started correctly expecting a little more from people in terms of their worldliness, right? And I think it's very passe to just refer to someone generally as Asian, right? Or even Asian American. I try to be more specific, right? But something I have noticed is that a lot of my Asian friends group, like Anita's of Chinese heritage, I believe.
Yes.
Right. And
She's
you're
Chinese
Korean
American.
heritage, right?
Chinese American, Korean American, yeah.
Right. But you've said, know, especially, she's Asian. I'm always interested in why someone of a specific background and it's not a critical statement, I'm
Mhm.
just curious about it.
Mhm.
Do you just feel a kinship with people from other countries that are Asian countries, or do you feel like you're all kind of dealing with the same stuff being in the
Mm.
United? Does this question make sense?
It does make sense. I talk about it with my friends from all over. We are my non-white friends. Actually, we talk about that. Like especially when you travel and you're in a place, and and you sort of notice. You know what I mean? Like, okay, who is here that is what I mean, like me. Like I think you. The likeness, I don't know that if I search it out, but you notice it for sure. I only say Asian American. To me, that it's such a big diaspora, right? And you're right. It's good to be specific, but if you don't know where their heritage is from, you know what I mean? Like I think Anita specifically, there's Chinese. Oh my gosh, she's gonna come into something. She's Chinese American for sure, but I think there's some Malaysian and there's some other specific Asianness. So you just never know. So
Right.
to just say, okay, you're definitely Asian, race wise, you're Asian. And so there's that identification, you know what I mean? Or there's that wink and a nod, like, okay,
Yeah.
I see you and you see me, even though we're the only two in this place.
Yes.
And you can't, that is sort of undeniable.
Yeah.
To be specific is fine, but if you don't know, you're going to take a guess. You don't want to be wrong.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No, but I
Yeah.
meant more from your.
But do I feel a kinship? I didn't take that job because she was Chinese American or Asian American. I took that job because I really respected the food that she was doing. And yes, maybe there is a certain amount of identifying with her. She also went to Columbia. So she is like sort of off the beaten path. Like she's not a typical culinary student, chef that became a chef. Like she meandered just a little
Oh
bit.
yeah.
And a lot of these chefs that I was gravitating towards is somebody like me in a way, not just physically, not race wise, but like somebody who I could identify with and maybe learn from. You know what I mean? And that likeness sometimes it gives you comfort, right? Because an industry like the culinary, like cooking in fine dining kitchens, it's a brutal place. Like I've seen a lot of stuff. Thank goodness a lot of it is come to light, in the past 10 years. Some of the really rough kitchens, a lot of abuse, a lot of terrible things that happens. And so I think more than her identifying as Asian or me identifying her as Asian, maybe it's the fact that she's a female, that she is a
Interesting.
woman doing the thing that was not expected us, that's not expected of us.
Sure. Well, we should say also the name of that restaurant, Anisa, means
Women.
woman.
That's
Yeah.
right. In Arabic. Yeah.
I don't know, younger viewers now, I guess I have to say,
Yeah.
may not know Anita's name even.
Right.
The memory is very short in the
Yeah.
culinary field.
Yeah.
But when she was working, which was
Mhm.
up until what, maybe 10 years ago?
No,
ish?
less than that, I think.
She closed pre-COVID.
She did, but not super too like I think
COVID messed up my
maybe
whole
20
time, my whole sense of
yeah,
time
maybe
passing.
2015, 2016.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe
Well,
I don't know.
Okay, ish. But
Oh
anyway,
my gosh, that
one
is
of the
10 years
best,
ago.
one
You're
of the
right.
best chefs in New York.
Yeah.
The restaurant was we
Groundbreaking.
don't have time to describe it.
Yeah.
But everything about it. Her food was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
It was super interesting.
But fine dining.
Oh, very much
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
I never asked her this. I think probably it was slightly inspired by what Chanterelle
Mhm.
looked like where she
Right.
had worked, because the walls
Right.
didn't have, they
Yeah,
weren't
yeah.
like adorned with all kinds of artwork. That was the signature of Chanterelle.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
and-
yeah.
But here's what I want to ask. Oh, you want to say something?
No.
Oh, I am struck, and I thought this is what you were just going to say when you said maybe it's because she's a woman,
Mhm.
but I am struck that you have worked for three chefs when you were
Mhm.
coming up
Mhm.
that I would describe as super nice people.
Mhm.
The one we haven't mentioned is you worked for Peter Hoffman at
Mhm.
Savoy.
Mhm.
Okay. I can't speak to Dan. I don't know Dan Barber that well.
Mhm.
Mike Anthony is a very good friend of mine. I
Lovely.
think he's just the
Yeah.
best. He was the fourth guest or third guest ever on the show.
Yeah.
Anita,
Mhm.
the best.
Mhm.
Um, And just to put it in context, like in terms of these are also people who all like to mentor.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh
like
yeah.
I know Anita sometimes refers to the Waltucks, who she
Mhm.
worked for at Chanterelle, as mom and dad.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all part of those three people's DNA.
Totally.
You know, you've referred a few times now to the obviously very real
Mm-hmm.
things that go on in some kitchens on the
Mm-hmm.
negative side of the
Mm-hmm.
spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
But these are all people who model the opposite of that
Totally.
behavior and
Mm-hmm.
make a point of it.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, were you just lucky on that front?
I
Because
think.
it seems to me, like when I was
Mm-hmm.
reading up on you to
Mm-hmm.
come do this interview,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, my God, she's only worked for the
Yeah.
good people.
Well, there's a lot that we will not talk about. I did work with some people.
Oh, are there jobs that just don't appear
Yeah.
in your bio?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Those are the ones that I
interesting.
like to shine because I know these wonderful
Interesting.
people. Dan Barber is also totally smart, and he's done an amazing thing, up there with Stone Barn. But I keep in touch with Michael and Anita, and I think I sought it out, and especially because I started this sort of late in life. Late 20s is not the time. Most chefs, they start, right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had a lot to catch up with, and so I interviewed at a lot of places, and I know that they were interviewing me back then. But for me, I think I had the wherewithal to know that I need to be a little bit more um, specific and very focused on what I'm going for here. So I really love the way that they ran their kitchens. Um, and I try to model that. Right now, I'm at the stage where I have a lot of mentees, and in fact, Anita wrote this really cute Instagram story. She went to go visit Sunny Lee's place,
Love
and
Sunny Lee.
Sunny Lee, and I like to call her my protege. She worked for me at Insa,
You
and
should say you're referring to Sons, by the
Sons, yeah,
way.
Sons,
Two
so great.
N's.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 N's, Sons, amazing, and super talented. And she also, she's a generation younger than me, but she also has some fine dining background. So, and when she came to me at INSA, it was that kind of affinity, and we just sort of clicked. And so, anyway, going back to Anita saying, I'm at Sons, and I just discovered that Sunny used to work for Sohi, which is my mentee. So she's my grand mentee. You know what I mean? Like, so there is that passing of the knowledge, especially I think in the female community, because it's been so hard historically, and that it is harder sometimes. For women, it's equalizing, and I think that's wonderful. But yeah, but no, Andrew, there's been plenty of chefs that I work for where I was like, okay, I'm taking notes, what not to do. You know what I mean? And sometimes you learn more by taking note of what not to do than what to
I
do.
could not agree more. I say
Yeah.
this all the time. It's just as valuable.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes, sometimes even more so.
The lessons are definitely hard, learned, and I won't mention those chefs. They're not even around really. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was an interesting time for me to come up, and so I when I talk to my young chefs and people who have, I say, graduated from the Good Fork or INSA or even Gage, since we're almost 5 years old.
Yeah.
There's a lot of young people doing the thing, and I love that they're able to call on me for advice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get to sort of share my expertise and my 2 cents and say, okay, that's a great idea. Maybe you should think about this. And I love that community, and more than anything else, more than the accolades that sometimes seem sort of superficial in terms of stars and this designation and that designation. It's really about the community building that I've really gravitated towards, in my career.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, you spend so much time with these people, you become family, and just like anything, you wanna nurture those relationships and make the community grow better and larger and stronger. Yeah, and I think that's why we opened this place, because let's keep the history going. You know what I mean? Let's do this. Like, there's a reason why it's been around for so long. There's a reason why this whole building, this restaurant, has been in the hands of very few families.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just felt right. And also, I think for all three of us partners, it really was sort of the opus, the thing that we wanted to do to make a mark. And I just love coming to work here. So great.
I can imagine. You know, I don't want to let the moment go by when you were talking about, women in the industry.
Hmm.
The West Coast, mostly Northern California, but even LA,
Hmm.
relatively speaking,
Yeah.
at least, very welcoming to women in the industry
Yeah.
historically. The Bay Area, you could argue, at a time was run by women chefs.
Hmm.
Basically, it was like a bunch of women chefs in
Totally.
Jeremiah Tower,
Yeah, that's
right?
true. Yeah.
Basically, at a
Right.
moment in time in like
Hmm.
the 80s, right?
Hmm.
Um, Boston had a number of women chefs early
Sure.
on. That often gets left out.
Yep.
New York is such a special case to me
It
because
is.
there are several very important chefs who were
Hmm.
women
Hmm.
who um, who aren't with us anymore
Yeah.
or are
Yeah.
recluses, right? Like
Yeah.
Anne Rosenzweig
Yeah.
does
I
not like
love
to
her.
do interviews. I think she's
No.
given one in the last
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, there's so many people.
Katie Sparks, Run Right, Anne
Katie's out of the
Rosenzweig. Yeah. Yeah.
business, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, doing stuff, but not
Yeah.
restaurants.
Yeah.
There was a woman in Leslie Revson
You're
years
right.
ago who
Hmm.
was a big deal.
Hmm. Patricia Yeo, yeah. I know.
Yeah,
There's a lot.
but there's a lot that
Yeah.
just aren't really
Hmm.
still participate. It's
Hmm.
like in tennis.
Hmm.
There's Andre Agassi who's still
Hmm.
everywhere, and John McEnroe who's
Hmm.
still everywhere, and then Pete Sampras, it's like he
Hmm.
doesn't exist, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And but I think that's a shame for New York. I feel like um, that, especially the ones who are deceased. It's just
Hmm.
there is this period that
Hmm.
just it's so there was no internet back then.
Yeah.
Like keeping that history
Yeah.
alive
Yeah.
is something that requires deliberate
Sure.
effort, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. I often think about a lot of these amazing chefs. Last time I saw Anne Rosenzweig was at the Good Fork. She came, and this was a long time ago. Um, they all made such a mark, and I think that they know it. You know what I mean? And the industry is so rough, and just the business of running a restaurant is so intense. Um, I sometimes think about like leaving the spotlight and the industry and just really sort of focusing on yourself, like you've sort of like been there, done that,
Yeah.
but it would be kind of cool to come up with like a little anthology or like a little history book, just, all the wonderful chefs that made their mark in the city.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Anita Lowe is still very active. She
Oh
does
yeah.
lots of great
Yeah.
tours and
Increasingly active
yeah, yeah, yeah.
after a little bit of a pause.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so let's talk about your restaurants.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, we should say you are business partners with your husband,
Hmm.
Ben Schneider.
Hmm.
When did you guys meet, and
Hmm.
how did you decide you were going to do what became the Good Fork together?
Yeah. We met in 2001 through my very best friend, Okwi Okwokwasili, who is a fabulous movement dancer, artist, performance artist, thinker. She's awesome. Anyway, we've been friends since I came to this country since 10. So Okwi was in the play in 2001 before 9/11 in the summertime, and Ben was in the show with her. So that's where I met him. So officially, he was a thespian when I
Mhm.
met him, and he was unlike other actors. You know how other actors they work in restaurants to support their art. Ben supported his art by doing carpentry work. All
Mhm.
those beautiful things that you see here. And I thought that was pretty cool. And we connected right away over our love of food, New York City. And then, we started dating. And it was hard because he, as a woodworker, he had his shop in Williamsburg, and he would get up early, go there, make beautiful furniture pieces. And then I would get up at like noon, go to work by 2,
As one
didn't get
does.
up to
Yeah.
2. So we never saw each other. And so we got married in 2004, and we thought, well, it would be kind of fun to join forces. You design a little small place, and I will cook, and people will come. Having no knowledge whatsoever about how to run a business. We didn't even write a business plan. It was literally like, Ben's going to build it, and I'm just going to cook, and it's going to be great. And
Well, you
that's
must have known better.
I know we did not, Andrew. I swear, if we knew what we know today, we'd never would have
But what
taken
I
that.
mean by that is there's a lot of stories in the distant past, but
Yeah.
even now, of people who just do that,
Yeah.
right? But you didn't start. You didn't start even thinking about this, or you didn't decide to commit to this till you were 29.
Hmm.
You're clearly very intelligent.
Hmm.
you worked in other restaurants.
Mhm.
What I mean is, you weren't someone who just, got out of high school and said,
Right, right.
let's buy that, let's grab that space.
Yeah.
Like you had seen what it takes to operate a
Yeah.
restaurant.
Yeah.
But so you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so but it was really a leap of faith, and it really was, I think, a part of that. When you're in your late 20s, you don't have, I didn't think I had that much wisdom, you know what I mean? And at this point, it's early 30s. And it really was, I think for me, I didn't think of it as such a grave thing. Like I was like, whatever, like we'll do this. First of all, back in the day in 2000 whatever, you could still get a lease that was very reasonable and turnkey options that were fine. You know what I mean?
Definitely on
It
this
just
side of the
wasn't
East River. Yeah,
absolutely,
right.
especially on this side of East River. And Ben we'd gotten this house that he had sort of rebuilt in Red Hook, and right around the corner there was a tiny little space, and so it seemed doable. So we did sketch out a little bit of a business plan, and we knew some people in the industry. We didn't get a lot of advice, but it really was this very naive, genuine love of food and entertaining. We're like, this space is awesome. Ben's like, I could make this curved ceiling, and it's gonna be like blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm gonna make the most amazing this and that, and gonna make my own kimchi and like sprinkle it in places and make it make sense, and it's going to be awesome. Our friends came, they helped us build a space, and if I can't even tell you how little money we spent to bring up that restaurant. And I think you could never do that again, right? Only
Right.
because I pretty much did everything in the back of the house to start, and then Ben constructed the whole place. So it was on a shoestring budget, which I don't think it's possible now, given the high costs of doing business in the city
Yeah,
now.
not here.
So it really
Right.
was time specific, and I'm so glad that we knew nothing and we were just passionate and we just jumped in, and people recognized us right away.
Mhm.
New York Times, all the accolades came, and that's what really jump started the whole thing. So I'm glad we were two young dumb kids who just wanted to hang out together and make
Well,
the space.
I don't know you that well, but I have to
Mhm.
say, if it's okay for me to ask, because I'm trying to imagine, my wife Caitlin and I pondered for a time maybe doing a restaurant, not in New
Mm.
York City.
Mhm.
We weren't that we weren't that crazy, but I feel like the fact that we were in, not to sound corny, that we were in love
Mhm.
was part of what made us feel like we probably could have done that. Do you think the fact that you were in this happy,
Absolutely.
still
Yeah.
relatively young relationship
Yeah.
helped give you that sort of
Oh, for sure.
wind at your back?
Oh, for sure. I would not have been able to do it by myself, and I know he never would have contemplated by himself. I think
Right.
it was a kismet. It was our energy coming together and hosting all these crazy parties in our house with Sinjin, who was our tenant at the time.
Oh, I
So
didn't know that.
yeah, so the three of us. That's we met on Coffee Street, and that was gave birth to many many plays and dinner parties, Oktoberfest, weddings. We got married in our backyard. Sinjin got married in our backyard. I did his wedding, and then a ton of other friends. It was that kind of youthful joie de vivre, like we could do this. Let's just DIY everything. And everybody would say, well, you guys should open a restaurant. And like, yeah, maybe we should open a restaurant. What? There's this little space around the corner. Let's do it. So it just sort of fell into place. But it was definitely, the carpenter and the cook,
Yeah.
who meet. And at the time, thank goodness, we were able to have the little support from our family, and the blessing to be like, yeah, you guys should totally do this.
It's so funny to me that you just said friends of yours said you guys should open a restaurant, because I just mentioned David and Karen Waltuck.
Oh, love
And
those
for
guys.
people who don't know,
Yeah,
um, Chanterelle was a very important restaurant. It opened in
legend.
1979.
Hmm.
It was one of the very first serious restaurants in Soho,
Hmm.
at least in that time period of New York
Hmm.
history.
Hmm.
Um, it became a really important
Hmm.
new American restaurant, although
Yep.
I would say when it opened, I would have called it Nouvelle Cuisine
Yep.
at that time.
Yep.
Had a 30-year run.
Hmm.
But David and Karen said to me once, I forget which of them said it, but we were having dinner
Yeah.
in Brooklyn
Yeah.
in the early aughts, and they said to me that the energy
Yeah.
in Brooklyn restaurants reminded them of downtown Manhattan
Totally.
in 1979 when they
Yeah.
started. They felt like that's where that spirit had gone,
Totally.
right? And
Yeah.
funny enough, I co-authored the Chanterelle cookbook,
Oh,
not the staff meals one,
okay, gotcha.
but the big restaurant
Yeah,
one.
nice.
And there's a little subsection in the intros that's in quotes that says, "You guys should open a restaurant,"
Yeah,
because that's how it happened.
that's how it
And
happened.
They were throwing dinner parties,
That's right.
and at the end of them, inevitably, somebody would say, "You two should open." I mean, David was already wanting to be a
Sure.
chef,
No.
but that was what gave them the kind of confidence to
Yes.
say, "Let's go find a space."
Yes.
The equivalent of Red Hook for them at that time was Soho. They took an old bodega space.
They did.
But it is, I often say, I feel like there's this spirit
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, of kind of young, unformed, optimistic creativity.
Talented.
Yeah, but I feel like it moves
hardworking.
around. Like I
It
feel like
does.
if you look at like Austin, Texas today,
Yeah.
I think some of it's over there.
Absolutely.
Or Charleston. I think some of
Absolutely.
it's down there.
Definitely.
Right?
I see it in a lot of young chefs, you know, who are of Cambodian descent or Vietnamese. Like they do this still in Brooklyn, you know, very, very talented young kids on a shoestring budget. Let's do a lot of pop-ups and then get that, you know, get our people together, sign a lease, and let's just see how it flows. Interestingly enough, you know, as you know, Anita worked with David and Karen.
Yes.
And I worked with Anita. So like there is, like when I say, like, you take notes and people that you surround yourself with, you know, and see how they do, like learn from their challenges, their mistakes, and their triumphs. You know what I mean? And you take that with you. It's that small independent restaurant vibe of like, let's do it ourselves. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily to make money, although that's always nice when you could, you know, pay payroll and all your vendors and
Labor
make
of
it
love.
makes a labor of love. It has to be. I mean, it's cliche. I say it all the time when I interview young kids. Like, how much do you love food? How much do you love hospitality and the beauty of a restaurant, dining out? Like, you have to love it because you're going to be here all the time. And so you want to instill that sort of passion in people when they get started young. But yeah, no, I'm so glad you brought them up. I love those guys. I think they're so
dear friends of
cool.
mine.
Yeah.
I just went to, I just road tripped to Mark Vettri's book party with
Oh,
David last week.
nice. Yeah.
Just cause.
Yeah.
We just drove to Philly for the
That's
night.
so great. No,
Yeah.
I saw them recently several months ago at a gala, and it was just such an honor to. I sat next to them. We talked about restaurants, and it
Well,
was
I always
really
say David is the most humble chef to have ever held
Totally.
4 stars from the New York Times.
cool. No, totally. I agree.
By a pretty good margin.
I agree.
So, okay, there's one restaurant we haven't talked about
Yeah.
at all, and that is Insa.
Uh-huh.
I mean, it's come up, but we
Yeah.
haven't really gotten into it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 2 things I'm crazy about: Korean food
Yeah.
and karaoke.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did this restaurant come about?
Yeah.
I think I probably know from hearing you talk about your own kind of
Mm-hmm.
curve, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of your heritage.
Mm-hmm.
But how did it come about, and how did you make for a restaurant
Yeah.
from someone of your talent with a restaurant like the Good Fork in their pocket?
Mm-hmm.
The karaoke piece
Yeah.
was so, when that restaurant
Yeah.
opened,
Mm-hmm.
that was such a curveball.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, that was a chapter 2 of Ben and Sohi show. Okay, we've had for over 10 years the Good Fork. We were just barely breaking even. And it was tough, especially in a neighborhood like Red Hook. And so I think, you know, the first many years learning how to now run a business, right? We know how to design menu, we know how to, you know, put out great food and beautiful decor, but like, how do you make this work? How do you make money at it? And then we had 2 small children. And it was then when I said, hey, Ben, like, you know, we have to make a decision here. Like, we're not going to make it as a family if we just have the Good Fork. And I've been approached, Ben was approached, you know, over the years, partnerships, people wanting us to do bigger projects. And I said, I think this is an opportunity for us to go big or go home. And we found this space that is Insa on Douglas in Gowanus. And back then it was still, we had just gotten in, I feel like. You know what I mean? Now you drive down 4th Avenue and 3rd Avenue, it's just unrecognizable.
For people who don't know, Gowanus is one of the many neighborhoods in Brooklyn
Industry.
that has gone from like urban, like an industrial area.
No,
to like
garages,
to
gas
like,
stations.
to like all kinds of restaurants.
Absolutely.
And, 420 Blackbird.
Oh my God.
The pie shop is there. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like.
Yeah. So, and also it's become an adult playground. There's
Yes.
axe throwing, there's shuffleboard,
Yes.
there's karaoke now, there's
Yes.
all kinds of gyms, clients.
Yeah.
So we found this beautiful space. And again, Ben, Ben just rolled up his sleeves and he was just like, oh my God, the amount of amazing building that I could do here. And again, we talked about this, about, Korean American identity. And I was like, I really want to, do Korean food my way, modern, classic, some twists, but like really. So we put our heart and soul into it and tapped a couple of people to help us, Michael Stokes, Jamie Seat, Young Shin, who's our partner there. And we just cranked, and we opened to such fanfare in December of 15. We're turning 10 years this year.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. So we opened December 15, 2015.
Next month. Here, it'll be last month when this airs.
Yeah, you have to come. So we're going to have a big party celebrating that milestone. And to be able to, open with such, the people welcomed us. Like, I feel like New York, Brooklyn, Gowanus was ready for a Korean barbecue. It was a crossover restaurant, and Pete Wells, gave us 2 stars, and it was a glowing review. And the fact that we lived through the pandemic, that we survived, and that we're able to celebrate 10 years, and people are still coming and celebrating, their birthdays, and all manners of celebration there, because the space is so large. And then the karaoke portion that you mentioned earlier, that is all Ben Schneider's genius.
He had the idea.
He had the idea, and I didn't want it in the beginning, because I don't want it to dumb down the food.
I was just going to say, it pulls down the seriousness of the
and
teaching.
it didn't, and it didn't at all. So it's like, why can't we do really great food, Korean food, and then do karaoke? So we have this funny tagline that we put on T-shirts sometimes. The Korean fun time place for celebration. The Korean fun time place for celebration, and that's really what it has become.
Mm-hmm.
So we're totally proud of that.
That's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it there.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thanks again for letting us be here.
Anytime. I'm so glad, you guys, that we're able to host you guys here, and thank you so much for the opportunity. It's always so lovely talking to you.
Of course. No, it's long overdue to get you on, and you own the joint. So anytime you have something on your mind, come on back, and please make this your place to get it off your chest.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And that is our show for today. Again, our great thanks to Sohui Kim for joining us. If you live in New York City or find yourself visiting, please be sure to check out Gage Tollner and the Sunken Harbor Club. And again, our thanks to Gage Tollner for hosting us. Please go check out Mies, the recipe operating system for culinary professionals, at getmies.com/Andrew. And our thanks, as always, to San Pellegrino for their longstanding support of the pod. Andrew Talks to Chefs is the property and a production of Table 12 Productions Incorporated. This episode was written, booked, and hosted by me, Andrew Friedman, produced by Rod Aline, and shot, edited, and mixed by Victor Michael Thelian. If you'd like to support us, we ask that you do that by telling a friend about the show, posting about the show on social media, and or rating and or reviewing us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are now watching us on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe. Our thanks, as always, to After School Special for our music. Please check out their album, Double Barrel, Single Entendre, on iTunes. Please follow us on Instagram, and also, as of this episode, on TikTok, @ChefPodcast is the handle on both platforms. Thank you for listening, and we will be back soon with another episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs.